The space around Verdania Prime exploded into chaos as the UES Defiance opened fire on the Krathak fleet with every weapon it carried. The human ship moved like nothing Admiral Korth had ever seen before as it twisted and rolled through space, while pouring destruction into the enemy formation. Human weapons hit their targets with deadly accuracy as Commander Alex Stone coordinated the attack from his tactical station. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching his crew work. With the smooth efficiency that came from years of training and combat experience, the Defiance shook under enemy fire. But the ship's heavy armor and redundant systems kept it fighting, even as Krathak weapons tore pieces off the hull. This was exactly what human ships were designed for, taking punishment and hitting back harder than anyone expected. Captain Dan Murphy led the first wave of human fighters as they launched from the Defiance's hangar bays and streaked toward the enemy ships. Dan had been flying combat missions for 12 years, and he had never seen anything as satisfying as the look of confusion on Krathak faces when they realized the humans weren't running away. His squadron moved through space like a pack of wolves, hunting prey as they picked apart the enemy formation. Lieutenant Sarah Wong flew her fighter through a gap between two Krathak destroyers and unleashed her full weapons load into the bridge of the nearest enemy ship. The aliens had expected her to fly in a straight line like most galactic species did, but Sarah had grown up playing three-dimensional combat games on Earth, and she thought in ways that made no sense to the enemy. "This is Red Squadron reporting. Multiple enemy kills!" Dan's voice came over the communication system as his fighters tore through the Krathak formation. These guys fight like they're following a rulebook from a military academy. They have no idea how to deal with fighters that don't follow their textbook formations. Down on the planet's surface, Lieutenant Ben Carter's Marines were working frantically to help Valyrian civilians reach the evacuation points. Ben's team had split up to cover more ground, and they were coordinating rescue operations across 3 different cities while fighting off Krathak ground forces that were trying to prevent the evacuation. Sergeant Amy Foster led her squad through the ruins of what had been a beautiful Valyrian medical center just hours before. The building was filled with injured civilians who couldn't be moved easily, and Amy's Marines were carrying them one by one to the waiting transport ships. The Valyrians were amazed by human strength as the Marines lifted loads that would have required mechanical assistance for any other species. "We've got incoming Krathak ground troops," one of Amy's corporals reported as he spotted enemy soldiers moving toward their position. "About 30 of them armed with heavy weapons, and they don't look like they want to negotiate." Amy smiled grimly as she checked her rifle and prepared for close combat. The Krathak had probably never fought humans before, and they were about to learn that Earth's children were just as dangerous on the ground as they were in space. Take defensive positions around the civilians, and remember, these guys have been bullying peaceful species for their entire careers. Show them what happens when they pick on someone who fights back. Back in space, Chief Engineer Ryan Mitchell was performing miracles in the Defiance's engine room as he kept the ship fighting despite taking massive damage from Krathak weapons. Ryan had rerouted power systems in ways that should have been impossible, and he was pushing the ship's engines far beyond their normal limits. Human engineering philosophy was simple: build it tough and make it work no matter what. "Bridge, this is engineering." Ryan's voice came over the communication system as he reported on the ship's condition. "We've lost 30% of our armor, plating and the port shields are down to 60%, but all weapons are still operational, and we can maintain full power to the engines. This ship was built to take a beating and keep fighting." Admiral Korth watched in growing disbelief as his supposedly superior fleet was systematically destroyed by a single human ship and a handful of fighters. The Krathak had built their entire military doctrine around the idea that overwhelming firepower and intimidation would make their enemies surrender without a real fight. They had never faced an enemy that seemed to get stronger and more determined as the battle continued. "How are they doing this?" Korth demanded as he watched another of his battleships explode under human weapons fire. "They should have been destroyed 10 minutes ago, but they're fighting like they don't know they're outnumbered." His tactical officer studied the sensor readings with confusion and growing fear. "Admiral, their ship is taking damage that would cripple any of our vessels, but somehow their systems keep working. And their fighters are using combat maneuvers that violate every principle of space warfare we've ever learned." The truth was that Humans fought differently because they came from a world that had taught them different lessons about survival. Where other species had learned cooperation and peaceful coexistence, humans had learned that sometimes you had to fight for what mattered, and that backing down from a bully only made things worse. Dr. Kate Sullivan was coordinating medical assistance for wounded Valerians as human rescue teams brought them aboard the Defiance. Her human immune system allowed her to work in conditions that would have killed most galactic medics, and she was amazed by how grateful the gentle aliens were for any help they received. Elder Thane. "This is Dr. Sullivan," Kate said as she established communication with the Valerian leader on the planet's surface. "We've evacuated over 50,000 of your people so far, and my teams are working to get the rest. How are the medical facilities holding up?" Elder Thane's melodic voice carried a note of wonder as he replied, "Dr. Sullivan, your people are performing miracles down here. Your Marines are carrying our injured in conditions that would exhaust our own rescue teams, and they refuse to leave anyone behind. We have never seen such determination and compassion combined in one species." Jake felt pride swell in his chest as he listened to the reports coming in from all over the battle zone. His people were doing exactly what humans had always done when faced with innocent people. In danger, they were fighting with everything they had and refusing to give up no matter how bad the odds looked. The tide of the battle began to turn as more Krathak ships fell to human weapons and the enemy formation started to break apart. Admiral Korth realized that his fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy he had completely underestimated, and for the first time in his military career, he felt something he had never experienced before: fear. "All ships concentrate. Fire on the human vessel," Korth ordered desperately as he tried to salvage something from this disaster. "Destroy them before they can do any more damage to our fleet." But it was too late because the humans had already proven their point to the galaxy. They weren't just another peaceful species that could be bullied into submission. They were the children of a world that had forged them into the ultimate protectors of innocent life. When someone cried out for help, humans answered not with negotiations or conditions, but with everything they had. The Defiance continued its relentless assault on the enemy fleet as Jake prepared for the final phase of the battle. The Krathak were brave when they were attacking defenseless civilians, but they were learning that courage had a different meaning when you faced an enemy that refused to be intimidated. "Alex, target their flagship," Jake ordered as he watched Admiral Korth's massive battleship try to retreat from the battle. "I want to have a personal conversation with the Admiral about his habit of murdering innocent people." The Defiance turned toward the enemy flagship like a predator stalking wounded prey, as the galaxy watched humanity announce itself as the new guardians of the innocent. The UES Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Verdania Prime system and immediately went to full alert as the crew saw the horror that was unfolding before them. The main screen showed dozens of massive Krathak warships surrounding the beautiful green and blue planet that was home to millions of Valerian civilians. Explosions lit up the planet's surface as the alien invaders continued their relentless bombardment. Admiral Jake Morrison felt sick to his stomach as he watched peaceful evacuation ships trying to flee the planet only to be destroyed by Krathak fighters before they could escape the gravity well. The enemy ships were enormous black vessels covered in weapons and armor that made them look like floating fortresses designed to bring terror and death wherever they went. Captain Lisa Hayes worked frantically at her console as she counted the enemy ships and analyzed their positions. "Admiral, I'm reading 43 Krathak vessels of various sizes, including at least 12 heavy battleships. They have the planet completely surrounded, and they're destroying everything that tries to leave." Commander Alex Stone was already running tactical analysis on his screens as he studied the enemy formation. The Krathak had positioned their ships in a standard siege formation that was designed to prevent anyone from escaping, while maximizing the firepower they could bring against targets on the surface. It was textbook military strategy, but it also revealed their weaknesses. "They're not expecting anyone to challenge them," Alex reported to Jake as he highlighted vulnerable points in the enemy formation. "Their ships are positioned for bombardment, not for fleet combat. If we hit them fast and hard, we can break their formation before they can reorganize." Dr. Kate Sullivan was monitoring communications channels as she tried to make contact with any surviving Valerians. Her console was filled with panicked transmissions in the musical language of the peaceful aliens as they begged for help, and tried to coordinate their desperate evacuation efforts. Jake opened a communication channel and broadcast on all frequencies in both human and galactic standard languages. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet addressing all ships in this system. Krathak vessels, you will cease your attack on Verdania Prime immediately and withdraw from this system. The response came quickly from the largest Krathak battleship as a harsh voice filled with arrogance and contempt replied to Jake's demand. I am Admiral Korth of the Krathak Dominion, and I do not recognize the authority of your pathetic species. You will withdraw immediately or be destroyed along with these worthless herbivores. Admiral Korth appeared on the main screen, and Jake got his first look at the enemy commander. The Krathak was a large reptilian creature with armored skin and yellow eyes that showed no mercy or compassion. He wore a military uniform covered in medals and decorations that told the story of dozens of conquered worlds and millions of dead civilians. Your reputation precedes you, Admiral Korth, Jake replied calmly, even though he felt rage building inside him. I've read the reports about your campaigns against defenseless worlds, but you've never faced humans before, and today you're going to learn why that was a mistake. Korth laughed, and his voice echoed through the Defiance's bridge like the sound of breaking glass. Humans? I have never heard of your species, but you must be another race of weak traitors trying to play at war. Look around you, little human, and see what happens to those who oppose the Krathak Dominion. As if to emphasize his point, Korth gave an order, and several Krathak ships opened fire on a group of Valerian evacuation vessels that were trying to reach the safety of open space. The defenseless ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light as their passengers were vaporized in seconds. Jake felt something cold and deadly settle in his chest as he watched innocent civilians die, while their killer laughed about it. This was exactly the kind of evil that humans had sworn to fight against when they joined the galactic community. These creatures had to be stopped before they could murder any more helpless people. Lisa, open a channel to the Valerian ships, Jake ordered as he prepared to announce humanity's intentions to both sides of this conflict. I want everyone in this system to hear what happens next. The communication channel opened and Jake's voice carried across space to every ship and every survivor who was still listening. This is Admiral Morrison to all Valerian vessels. My ship represents the Terran Defense Fleet, and we are here to help you evacuate your people safely. Do not be afraid and do not give up hope, because humans never abandon innocent people who call for help. The response from the Valerians was immediate and filled with desperate gratitude as their musical voices flooded the communication channels. Elder Thane, who was coordinating the evacuation from the planet's surface, managed to establish a clear connection with the Defiance. Admiral Morrison, we have never heard of your species, but we welcome your assistance with all our hearts, the elderly Valerian leader said in his gentle, melodic voice. We have 3 million people still on the surface, including thousands of our younglings who are too sick to be moved from medical facilities. We cannot abandon them, but we have no way to protect them from these monsters. Jake felt his resolve harden as he listened to the desperation in Elder Thane's voice. The Valerians were exactly what Dr. Sullivan had told him. They were a completely peaceful species who had never learned how to fight because they had never needed to. Their whole civilization was built around healing and nurturing life, and they were completely helpless against the Krathak war machine. Elder Thane, this is what we're going to do, Jake said as he watched his crew prepare the ship for battle. My Marines are going to help with your evacuation efforts while my ship deals with the Krathak fleet. Keep your people calm and get them to the evacuation points. We'll make sure they get safely off the planet. Admiral Korth had been listening to this exchange with growing amusement, and now he interrupted with another burst of cruel laughter. How touching, another species of weaklings trying to play the hero. I think I will destroy your ship first, human, so you can watch these plant eaters die, knowing that your interference only made their suffering worse. Admiral, you're about to learn something important about humans, Jake replied as he gave the signal for his crew to begin combat operations. We don't just fight to win, we fight to protect, and that makes us the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Lieutenant Ben Carter's voice came over the communication system as he reported that his Marines were ready for deployment. Admiral, my teams are standing by to board Valerian evacuation ships and provide assistance. We're ready to launch on your command. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew and saw the same cold determination in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. These people had volunteered to serve in the military because they believed in protecting innocent life, and today, they were going to prove that humans meant what they said when they made that promise. "All stations report ready for combat," Alex announced as the ship's weapon systems came online and the shields reached full power. "The crew is at battle stations and we're ready to engage the enemy." Jake stood up from his command chair and looked one last time at the carnage on the main screen as Krathak ships continued to bombard the helpless planet below. Somewhere down there, millions of innocent people were depending on him and his crew to save them from certain death. "Launch the Marines and begin the evacuation support operations," Jake ordered, as he felt the familiar calm that always came over him just before a battle. "And send a message to the Krathak fleet they have 30 seconds to cease fire and withdraw, or we will consider them hostile and respond accordingly." Admiral Korth's image appeared on the screen one more time and his yellow eyes gleamed with predatory excitement. 30 seconds? I will give you 10 seconds to run away, little human, before I turn your ship into scrap metal and space dust." Jake smiled grimly as he watched the countdown timer on his screen reach 0. "Admiral Korth, let me introduce you to humanity's response to bullies who hurt innocent people. All weapons free, engage the enemy." The Defiance leaped forward like a hunting wolf as it charged directly into the heart of the Krathak formation and the galaxy's first glimpse of human combat doctrine began with a thunderclap of weapons fire that lit up the darkness of space. The bridge of the UES Defiance hummed with quiet activity as Admiral Jake Morrison stood watching the stars through the main screen. The massive ship moved through space at the edge of human territory, far from Earth and the safety of the inner colonies. Jake had been out here for 3 months now, patrolling the borders and making sure no hostile aliens tried to sneak into human space. It was boring work most of the time, but someone had to do it. Captain Lisa Hayes sat at her station, monitoring the long-range sensors. She was good at her job and had been with Jake for 5 years now. Her fingers moved across the control panel as she checked for any unusual signals or ships that might be hiding in the darkness between stars. The crew trusted her completely because she never missed anything important. The ship was quiet except for the low hum of the engines and the soft beeping of various computers. Most of the crew was either sleeping or doing routine maintenance work. Commander Alex Stone was in his quarters reading reports from other patrol ships. Dr. Kate Sullivan was in her lab studying samples from the last planet they had visited. Everything was normal and peaceful. Then Lisa's console started making loud warning sounds. She looked at her screen with confusion and then excitement as data flooded across it. Jake turned around quickly and walked over to her station. Alex came running onto the bridge from his quarters, still putting on his uniform jacket. "What is it, Lisa?" Jake asked as he looked over her shoulder at the readings. The numbers on the screen were jumping around wildly, and there were signals coming from a direction where no human ship should be. "Admiral, I'm picking up a transmission from deep space," Lisa said as she worked to clean up the signal. "It's not human, but it's definitely artificial. Someone is broadcasting on multiple frequencies and the signal is very strong." Alex joined them at Lisa's station and studied the data. He was the best tactical officer in the fleet and could read sensor data better than anyone else Jake knew. "This is coming from at least 50 light years away," Alex said with surprise in his voice. "Whatever is sending this signal has incredible power to reach us from that distance." Dr. Kate Sullivan came onto the bridge carrying a data pad. She had heard the alarm from her lab and wanted to know what was happening. Kate was the ship's expert on alien life and had studied dozens of different species since humans first went to the stars. "Have you been able to decode the message yet?" she asked as she walked over to the group. Lisa shook her head and continued working on her console. "The signal is using a format I've never seen before, but the computer is learning the pattern. Give me a few more minutes and I should be able to translate it." Her fingers moved quickly across the controls as the ship's powerful computers worked to understand the alien language. Jake felt a strange feeling in his stomach. In all his years in space, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now they were telling him that something big was about to happen. He looked around the bridge at his crew and saw the same tension in their faces. They all knew that receiving an unknown alien signal this far from home could mean many different things, and not all of them were good. The main screen flickered, and then words began to appear in human language as the computer finished translating the message. Everyone on the bridge stopped what they were doing and read the text in silence. The words were simple, but filled with desperation and fear. To anyone who can hear this message, we are the Valerian Republic, and we need help immediately. Our worlds are under attack by the Krathak Dominion, and we have no way to defend ourselves. They have already destroyed 3 of our planets, and millions of our people are dead. Please, if anyone receives this transmission, we are begging for assistance. We do not know how to fight, and our people are dying. Our home world of Verdania Prime is their next target, and we have nowhere to run. This message will repeat until someone answers, or until we are all gone. The bridge fell completely silent as everyone processed what they had just read. Kate was the first to speak, and her voice was very quiet. Admiral, I've heard of the Valerians before. They're a peaceful species that lives about 60 light years from here. They're known throughout the galaxy for their medical knowledge and their ability to make dead planets green and beautiful again. They've never hurt anyone. Alex pulled up star charts on his console and located the Valerian territory. If someone is attacking them, it has to be the Krathak Dominion, he said grimly. They're a military empire that conquers weaker species and takes their resources. I've read reports about them, but they've never been this close to human space before. Jake stared at the message on the screen and felt anger building inside him. He had spent his whole life protecting innocent people, and the idea that someone was destroying an entire peaceful civilization made his blood boil. How far away are they, Lisa? He asked without taking his eyes off the screen. Verdania Prime is 58 light years from our current position, Lisa replied after checking her calculations twice. At maximum speed, we could be there in 6 days. Dr. Sullivan looked up from her datapad where she had been reading everything the ship's computer knew about the Valerians. Admiral, these people have never fought a war in their entire history. Their whole society is built around healing and helping others grow food and medicine. They don't even have weapons on their ships because the concept of violence is completely foreign to them. Jake felt his hands clench into fists as he thought about defenseless civilians being murdered while the galaxy did nothing to help them. He had joined the military to protect people who couldn't protect themselves, and that was exactly what the Valerians were. They were crying out for help, and it was his duty to answer that call. Set course for Verdania Prime maximum speed, Jake ordered as he stood up straight and looked around at his crew. Send word to Earth Command that we're responding to a distress call, and somebody wake up the Marines because we're going to war. The bridge burst into activity as everyone hurried to carry out their orders. Lisa's fingers flew across her console as she programmed the jump coordinates. Alex began running tactical scenarios and checking weapons systems. Kate started researching everything she could find about both the Valerians and the Krathak Dominion. As the Defiance turned toward its new destination and prepared to jump to faster than light speed, Jake looked one more time at the desperate message still playing on the main screen. Somewhere out there, innocent people were dying and no one in the galaxy seemed willing to help them. But they had never met humans before, and humans had a reputation for doing impossible things when innocent lives were at stake. The ship jumped to hyperspace and began its race across the galaxy toward a world under siege. The UES Defiance cut through hyperspace like a knife through dark water as it raced toward the Valerian homeworld. In the ship's conference room, Admiral Jake Morrison sat with his senior staff as they prepared for what might be the most important battle in human history. The room was filled with tension as everyone realized they were about to face an enemy they had never fought before. Lieutenant Ben Carter stood at the front of the room, briefing the assembled officers about what made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. Ben was a Marine squad leader who had fought in border conflicts against pirates and hostile aliens for the past 10 years. He was tough and experienced, and his men trusted him completely. Most of you already know this, but I want to make sure everyone understands what we're dealing with, Ben said as he activated the wall display. Earth is classified by the Galactic Council as a Class 12 death world. That means our home planet is so dangerous that most alien species consider it completely uninhabitable. The display showed a rotating image of Earth with its blue oceans and green continents. To humans it looked beautiful and peaceful, but Ben knew that appearances could be very deceiving. The gravity on Earth is almost twice as strong as the standard for most inhabited worlds in the galaxy. What feels normal to us would crush the bones of a Valyrian, or make it impossible for them to even stand up. Commander Alex Stone nodded as he remembered his first meeting with alien diplomats 5 years ago. The representatives from the Galactic Council had needed special gravity suits just to walk around on Earth's surface. Even with the suits, they could only stay for a few hours before the stress became too much for their bodies to handle. The weather on Earth is also considered extremely violent by galactic standards. Ben continued as the display showed images of hurricanes and tornadoes and lightning storms. What we call a normal thunderstorm would be classified as a natural disaster on most other worlds. Our planet has weather patterns that can kill you in dozens of different ways. Chief Engineer Ryan Mitchell had been quiet until now, but he spoke up from his seat at the back of the room. It's not just the physical conditions that make Earth dangerous. Our whole ecosystem is built on the idea that everything is trying to eat everything else. Most alien worlds have evolved cooperation and peaceful coexistence between species. Ryan was right, and everyone in the room knew it. Earth's history was written in blood and violence as species fought each other for millions of years. Humans had evolved not just to survive this nightmare, but to become the ultimate predators on their own world. They had climbed to the top of the food chain by being smarter and more ruthless than anything else on the planet. Dr. Kate Sullivan pulled up files on her datapad showing biological comparisons between humans and other galactic species. The average human has muscle density that is 3 times higher than most aliens. Our bones are twice as strong and our reflexes are much faster. We can survive injuries and diseases that would kill most other species within hours. The room fell silent as everyone thought about what this meant for the coming battle. They weren't just fighting to save the Valyrians, they were representing their entire species in front of the galaxy. This would be the first time humans fought a major military campaign, and everyone would be watching to see what Earth's children were capable of. Marine Sergeant Amy Foster had been listening carefully to the briefing, and now she stood up to address the group. Amy was small compared to most of the men in the room, but she was one of the toughest fighters in the human military. She had earned her rank through years of combat experience, and her soldiers would follow her anywhere. What the lieutenant and the others are trying to tell you is that we're not like other species in the galaxy, Amy said in her calm, steady voice. Every human in this room carries the genetic memory of 1,000,000 generations of survivors. Our ancestors didn't just live on Earth, they conquered it by being tougher and more determined than anything else that lived there. Amy walked over to the display and changed it to show historical images of human warfare throughout the centuries. While other species were developing art and philosophy and peaceful cooperation, our people were fighting wars against each other and against nature itself. We learned how to make weapons and armor and how to organize armies because on Earth, if you couldn't fight, you died. Jake had heard all of this before, but it still amazed him to think about how different humans were from their galactic neighbors. Most alien species had evolved on worlds that were like gardens compared to Earth. They had never faced the constant threat of death from predators or weather or disease that had shaped human evolution. The important thing to remember, Ben continued, is that what the galaxy calls impossible odds are just normal life for humans. We've been fighting for survival since our species first learned to use tools. Every challenge that would stop another species is just another problem for us to solve. Ryan stood up and moved to his own display showing technical specifications for human ships and weapons. This extends to our technology as well. While other species build for efficiency and elegance, we build for durability and redundancy. Our ships can take damage that would destroy any other vessel in the galaxy. The display showed cross-sections of the Defiance compared to ships from other species. Where alien vessels had single backup systems for critical components, human ships had 3 or 4. Where other ships used lightweight materials, humans used heavy armor plating that could withstand incredible punishment. Human military doctrine is also completely different from galactic norms, Alex added, as he joined Ryan at the display. Most species fight according to established rules and traditions that have been developed over thousands of years. They exchange formal challenges and fight battles at predetermined times and places. Alex changed the display to show tactical formations used by various alien military forces. They were neat and organized and followed patterns that had been used for centuries. Humans don't fight like that. We fight to win by any means necessary, and we adapt our tactics to whatever the situation requires. Dr. Sullivan had been researching the Krathak Dominion since they received the distress call, and now she shared what she had learned. The Krathak are a typical galactic military power. They rely on overwhelming firepower and intimidation to force their enemies to surrender. They've conquered dozens of peaceful species over the past century, and they've never faced serious resistance. The display showed images of Krathak warships and soldiers. They were large and impressive looking, but they followed standard galactic designs that prioritized appearance over function. Their tactics were predictable, and they relied on their reputation to frighten their enemies into submission without having to actually fight. The problem for the Krathak is that they've never fought humans before, Jake said as he stood up and looked around the room at his officers. They think they're dealing with another peaceful species that will run away when faced with superior firepower. They have no idea what's coming for them. Amy smiled grimly as she thought about the coming battle. The Krathak have spent their whole existence bullying species that can't fight back. They're about to learn what happens when they pick on someone who fights back harder than they do. Jake felt pride swell in his chest as he looked at his crew. These were the children of Earth, and they carried the strength and determination of their brutal home world in their genes. They had been forged by a planet that tried to kill them every day, and they had not just survived, but thrived. In 6 hours we'll drop out of hyperspace at Verdania Prime, Jake announced to the room. We're going to show the galaxy what humans do when innocent people call for help. We're going to remind everyone why Earth is called a death world, and why its children are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The meeting broke up as everyone returned to their duties, but the mood on the ship had changed completely. They were no longer just responding to a distress call, they were carrying the reputation of their entire species into battle. The Krathak Dominion was about to learn that some species were better left alone. The UES Defiance closed in on Admiral Korth's flagship like a hunting predator that had cornered its prey. The massive Krathak battleship tried to retreat from the battle, but the human ship was faster and more maneuverable than anything the aliens had ever encountered. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on his bridge watching the enemy vessel grow larger on the main screen as they prepared for the final confrontation. The Krathak flagship was 3 times the size of the Defiance and covered in enough weapons to destroy a small moon, but Jake had learned long ago that size wasn't everything in a fight. The ship had been designed to intimidate enemies into surrendering, not to fight against someone who refused to be scared. Its massive bulk made it slow and clumsy compared to the sleek human warship that stalked it through space. Commander Alex Stone reported that the evacuation of Verdania Prime was almost complete, thanks to the heroic efforts of Lieutenant Ben Carter's Marines and the fighter squadrons led by Captain Dan Murphy and Lieutenant Sarah Wong. The last transport ships were lifting off from the planet's surface, carrying the final groups of Valerian civilians to safety among the human fleet. Admiral, we've evacuated over 2.8 million Valerians, and my teams are working on the last medical facilities. Ben's voice came over the communication system from the planet's surface. Sergeant Amy Foster's squad just secured the main children's hospital, and they're loading the last of the younglings onto transport ships now. Jake felt a surge of pride as he listened to the reports from his people. They had come to this system to answer a cry for help, and they were keeping their promise despite facing overwhelming odds. The galaxy was watching as humans showed what they did when innocent lives were at stake, and Jake wanted to make sure the lesson was remembered. Dr. Kate Sullivan had been working non-stop in the medical bay, treating wounded Valerians as the rescue teams brought them aboard. Her human stamina allowed her to work for hours without rest in conditions that would have exhausted most alien medics. The gentle plant-like beings were amazed by her dedication and skill, as she saved lives that would have been lost without immediate treatment. Elder Thane, this is Dr. Sullivan, Kate said, as she took a brief moment to update the Valerian leader. We've treated over 3,000 wounded, and the survival rate is much higher than we expected. Your people are tougher than they look, and they're responding well to human medical techniques. Elder Thane's musical voice carried emotions that Humans rarely heard from other species as he replied, "Dr. Sullivan, your people have given us back our future. Without your help, our entire civilization would have been destroyed today. We will never forget what humanity has done for us." The Defiance finally caught up with the Krathak flagship, and Jake opened a communication channel to Admiral Korth 1. Last time. The reptilian alien appeared on the screen, and Jake could see fear in his yellow eyes for the first time since the battle began. Korth had spent his career bullying peaceful species, but he had never faced an enemy that fought back harder than he did. "Admiral Korth, this is your last chance to surrender," Jake said calmly as he looked into the alien's frightened eyes. "Order your remaining ships to withdraw from this system and never return, or I will finish what you started when you decided to murder innocent civilians." Korth's fear quickly turned to rage as his pride refused to let him admit defeat to a species he had never heard of before today. "I am Admiral Korth of the Krathak Dominion, and I do not surrender to inferior species. If I cannot conquer these plant-eaters, then I will destroy them completely along with anyone who tries to protect them." The Krathak flagship suddenly changed course and headed directly toward Verdania Prime, as Korth made his final desperate decision. If he couldn't have the planet, then no one would, and he was going to ram his ship into the surface at full speed. The explosion would destroy what was left of the Valerian civilization and kill any civilians who hadn't been evacuated yet. Jake felt cold fury wash over him as he realized what the alien commander was planning. This was exactly the kind of evil that humans had evolved to fight against, the willingness to destroy innocent life, rather than accept defeat. Korth was about to learn why Earth was called a death world and why its children were the most dangerous protectors in the galaxy. "Alex, lock weapons on their engines and prepare for ramming speed," Jake ordered as he made the same decision that had defined humanity throughout its violent history. "We're going to stop that ship even if we have to. Destroy ourselves to do it." The Defiance accelerated to attack speed as it chased the Krathak flagship toward the planet below. Chief Engineer Ryan Mitchell pushed the engines beyond their safety limits as he gave Jake every bit of power the ship could generate. Human engineering had been designed for exactly this kind of situation, where you had to risk everything to save innocent lives. "Admiral, their ship is too big and we're running out of time," Alex reported as he calculated the intercept course. "Even if we disable their engines, they might still have enough momentum to reach the planet." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew and saw the same determination in their faces that had carried humans through 1,000,000 years of survival on the deadliest world in the galaxy. They all knew what had to be done, and they were ready to make the ultimate sacrifice to protect people they had never met before today. "Then we ram them," Jake said simply as he gave the order that would define humanity's reputation for the rest of galactic history. "All hands prepare for collision. We're going to show the galaxy what humans do when innocent people are threatened." The Defiance caught up with the Krathak flagship just as it entered the planet's atmosphere, and Jake ordered all weapons to fire at point-blank range. Human weapons tore through the enemy ship's armor as both vessels plunged toward the surface, locked together in a deadly embrace. The flagship's engines finally exploded under the combined stress of damage and atmospheric entry. Lieutenant Ben Carter's voice came over the communication system one last time as he reported from the planet's surface. "Admiral, this is Ben. All civilians have been evacuated and my teams are clear of the impact zone. You did it, sir. You saved them all." Jake felt peace settle over him as he realized that his crew had accomplished their mission. The Valerians were safe, and the galaxy had learned that humans meant what they said when they promised to protect innocent life. The Krathak would think twice before attacking defenseless civilians again. But the story wasn't over yet, because Chief Engineer Ryan Mitchell had one more miracle left in him. "Admiral, I can separate the forward sections and use the emergency engines to pull us away from the planet. It's going to be rough, but we might just survive this." The Defiance broke apart as planned, and the crew sections pulled away from the doomed Krathak flagship just before it struck the planet's surface in a massive explosion that lit up the sky. The human ship limped back towards space, badly damaged, but still intact as rescue vessels rushed to help them. Elder Thane's voice filled the communication channels as he spoke for all the survivors on behalf of his people. "Today we called out for aid and angels answered our prayers. Angels with the faces of warriors who were willing to die for people they had never met. The Valerian Republic will never forget what humanity has done for us." Admiral Korth died in Taidio, the explosion of his flagship, but his surviving officers retreated from the system, carrying word of what they had encountered. The Krathak Dominion issued no more demands for surrender to species under human protection, and other peaceful civilizations began to request inclusion in humanity's growing sphere of influence. 6 months later, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the rebuilt Defiance as they received another distress call from a species they had never met facing enemies they had never fought. His response was immediate and without hesitation, because that was what humans did when someone cried out for help. "Set course for the distress signal maximum speed," Jake ordered as his crew prepared for another mission. "Looks like the galaxy needs its guardians again." The Defiance jumped to hyperspace carrying the children of Earth toward another world in need, because humanity had found its place in the galaxy as the species that answered when innocent people called for aid. They were the Death World's greatest gift to the universe protectors who would fight any enemy and face any odds to keep the innocent safe from harm.